Hi, my name is Amber Rose McNeill, and my film is meyne, hent. It is based loosely on a poem by Yiddish poet Celia Dropkin, and it is a film that explores the intersection of womanhood, Jewishness, and queerness.
Thank you for being here today. And when you sent in this film, I wasn't kind of expecting it the way because I've seen your past work. You're a legacy filmmaker, and you've shown other work at our festival. It was
Yes.
completely different than what I would normally expect from what you do.
Yeah.
This seems like a more personal project for you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I do make a variety of films. I do love working in appropriated media, and some of those films are the films that kind of, I guess, launched me into the festival circuit, made a little bit of a name for myself with the social commentary about societal violence and things like that. But yeah, I've also made queer horror. I have a feminist horror film in the works. And I have made some more personal and I guess softer films, if that makes sense. But usually they're not as popular, I guess, because people like violence and horror and, the absurd more than they seem to like soft and introspective and personal and feminine works, I guess. But I do work in personal cinema and essay cinema, as well as landscape cinema. And this film, Meyne, hent, kind of, or in English, My Hands, kind of combined those things together within, or allowed me to explore Jewishness and living in a femme body and queerness in this very kind of personal manner that is very introspective and internal and interior, but also kind of maybe not juxtaposition, but look at that in comparison to nature and elements of nature, and particularly elements of nature that appear in Jewish scripture.
So you took this from a Yiddish poem. Is this work that you follow this poet is, or is this a piece that you kind of found and thought it would be good for what you wanted to do?
So I already really loved Celia Dropkin's work. A lot of it has been translated into English. A lot of her poetry books have the English and then the Yiddish kind of on opposite pages, which is really beautiful. I do speak a little bit of Yiddish. I'm not completely fluent, but I am fluent enough to read her poetry. So yeah, I was already a big fan of Celia Dropkin, and I was actually planning to make a landscape, like a purely landscape film, when this idea of like my hands and kind of like digging into the dirt and very visceral images kind of appeared in my head when I kept thinking about landscape. So I ended up linking the two together, but it wasn't something that I hadn't planned to make a film loosely based around this poem. It just kind of all ended up coming together.
I enjoyed the film because the photography and the how evocative the shots are with the hands going into the ground and just kind of like pulling at the dirt and the snow. I thought that was very effective. Did you shoot all this yourself, or
I
did you
did,
have a
yes.
DP?
No. I everything contained in the film I did myself. I did the cinematography, and I don't consider myself to be a cinematographer by any means. Um, in terms of like camera operation, I only usually do that for like 16mm or 8mm filming, not usually for digital. And this film is a digital project. So yeah, it was definitely different for me working within a digital medium, being behind the camera, but also in front of it simultaneously. I think that helps to add to that very personal space that the film is based in. Yeah, I was actually pretty surprised myself with some of the shots, because I mean, not being a cinematographer, I'm not like, oh, this is something that I'm great at, or I guess actively pursue. So looking back at a lot of the footage, and definitely during the edit, I was like, wow, I got some really great shots. Like, I'm kind of proud of myself. I didn't know I had this in me, but I think the film being based in such a personal subject matter, and being a personal film and sort of an essay film, as well as being very linked to parts of my identity, including Jewishness and Judaism, and loosely basing it on this Jewish poet, this Yiddish poet, I think that kind of helped. I think I was thinking less about the fact that I was filming,
Mhm.
and more about what I was trying to explore through the lens and through film. If that does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. So you're saying that you normally, when you shoot yourself, you use film, but this time you use digital. I generally feel that film has a more of a warmth feel, and digital is a bit more cold and the pixels
Mm.
play into that. But I didn't feel that with what you were doing there. So what kind of camera did you use?
I hate to admit this, I actually used my iPhone,
Yeah.
which I was, I remember talking to somebody many moons ago that was shooting a whole feature on an iPhone. I mean, iPhones were not as advanced as they are now. Like, the iPhone I has three separate cameras, like lenses, cameras, essentially. Um, I didn't really want to shoot it on my iPhone, to be honest, but a lot of the shooting, I was in a bath, I was by myself. I had initially started the project filming on a Bolex, filming 16 millimeter on Vision's film stock.
That might have been difficult doing that in a bath and holding the camera.
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult enough to just, because some of the first shots that I filmed with a Bolex, with a 16 millimeter camera,
Yeah.
were the digging in the dirt shots, and just filming those alone, one-handed, with a very hefty, and they're not super common cameras anymore.
Hmm.
So expensive and hefty camera was really difficult, and I was just like, there were shortages of that film stock at that time, which were an extra stress. But I was like, if I drop my camera in the bath,
Well,
that's
true.
you know
It's a camera that that you kind of need both hands to do. And when I remember what your film is, you're focusing on your hand.
yeah.
So it's a heavier camera, and trying to do that with one hand is a little difficult.
Yeah, I mean, and I had considered using other digital cameras, like professional digital cameras, in order to shoot, but I felt ultimately that using an iPhone, even though I feel like that's a little bit icky for filmmaking, and that's just my personal opinion. There have been some great films. I think Tangerine was shot on an iPhone. Like, there are some
Yeah,
great ones that have been shot on
but
phones.
they were using, I think they were using like pro lenses and stuff, just attachments to it. Like
Yeah.
That's how Soderbergh shoots with his iPhone. He has like attachments and like, high quality lenses.
Yeah, yeah, which is amazing. And thankfully, I have a iPhone 13 that, like, they're not professional lenses, but they can pass for professional lenses.
Mhm.
Um, and even though I felt weird about it, it allowed me to see what I was doing in real time, have like a very small, lightweight camera, and it also, even though the first couple of shots that I was doing with it, I was like, oh, I don't like this. I don't feel like a professional doing this. Um, it ended up, once I kind of got into the flow, it kind of helped it feel more diaristic, as in, like, you're doing something with with your phone, which these days people vlog and blog and, do all kinds of personal artistic pursuits
Yeah.
with their phones. So it did actually kind of help ultimately to get me into that kind of diaristic and very personal space, because I wasn't thinking about tech when I was filming. I was thinking about the mood and the exploration, instead of getting caught up in like, oh, what lens am I using, and what depth of field do I need, and like, is my exposure right? I didn't have to worry about any of that, and I could just explore the landscapes, whether that be the landscape of body or the landscape of nature. I was able to do that in a way where it felt like I was more connected to the subject matter, and there wasn't that barrier of the tech of the camera in the way.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.